You're still standing? Welcome to the last day of the European Youth Conference here. Great you're here at this time. How do you feel? Did you get some sleep? But you're still here. Yay, that's the spirit. Thanks a lot. So, after the intensive work day yesterday, thanks for that once again. Yay! We have another half day today with you. And just shortly look at the agenda. So what are we going to do? Now we have until 10 together. And we're going to look at the youth goals, because they're finished already. Woo! So yeah, until 10, there's time for that. Then 10 to 10:30, we have a coffee break. 10:30 to 11:15, there will be a panel, citizens dialogue. And then from 11:30 to 12:30, there will be already the official closing of this conference. Yesterday in the evening, all of your small working groups handed over the drafts for the, or not the drafts, actually the final versions from your working group for the youth goals. And there was still some work done in the evening and until in early morning today. So thanks for that. This finishing team worked hard, and now we would like to know what they actually did. So we have here today Thea from the finishing team. So she has multiple roles in this conference, but she was also in the finishing team. What did you do yesterday?
Yeah, first we gathered all of your youth goals, and we had the first look, and we were amazed. We were really happy that you all handed this or sent it to us, first of all, on time. We know that the day wasn't easy, that you were working hard, but we actually gathered them, and when we saw them, we were like, oh my God, that's it. This is what we were aiming for. So thank you very much. We saw that you all really got the essence what we were aiming for. I know that a lot of you were part of previous conferences, and a lot of you are used to the policy language, and maybe a lot of you have worked on recommendations or something similar, but you managed to bring this to another level, and now we're not talking about recommendations, we're not talking about implementation plans, we're talking about youth goals with its targets, and you managed to achieve this. So we had 11 youth goals, and what we needed to do basically was not that much work, just putting them in some kind of order to making a coherence document. Because what we wanted to achieve that as they are standing together, of course they represent the picture what matters to young people and what we're going to do in the future. But at the same time, if you look only at one goal, it has to be clear for everybody. So basically, this is what we were doing. We were putting them in some kind of order. And we didn't prioritize anything because all of the topics are equally important. So what we did is that we arranged them by alphabetical order, by the names of the youth goals. And then, as we explained to you yesterday already, each of the youth goal has 4 ingredients. It has a title, short title, one sentence description that represents the change you want to see in society. Then it's like a short explanatory note defining why this is important, and then 5 to 7 targets. And also here we saw that you were actually really respecting this, that all of you produce all 4 ingredients and you stayed in the frame that was agreed among us. So all of the goals had 5 to 7 targets. Well, basically, most of them had 7 targets, of course, because we have a lot to say, but this is good as well. So what we did is, as said, we ordered the youth goals by alphabetical order, and with the targets, maybe we just moved one target before another, and just to actually ensure that the first target it's more broader, and then getting into more specific. But if this wasn't necessarily needed, we left the order as it is, because again, we didn't want to prioritize anything, and we believe that all of the targets as well are equally important. When it comes to the wording, we try to come up with a coherence document, so just trying to use the same words, trying to make some small changes, but I don't think it was really that much about it. We did change one of the title, so I hope that the group will understand why we needed to do that. But two of the goals were actually addressing young people in the relation to EU or European space. So in order to make a difference between this, we changed the title that was before Europe for Youth, and in brackets TH, into the Youth Organization and European Program, just to make sure that the title speaks for itself as well. Europe for Youth, it's of course very nice, and we liked it as well, but we want the title to speak for itself as well, so that it's strong, so that if somebody is only going to look at the titles, it's going to be clear what we're aiming for. But of course, the content still remains the same as you proposed it. So basically, I would say that, yeah, we didn't have so much work to do because you really did an amazing job. And I would say now that the youth goals really presents the vision that we have for the future. And what we're going to do with the youth goals now, it's actually that we're going to send them as one of the input for the future EU youth strategy. And on my opinion, hopefully, of course, the Commission is going to take it on board, but the content there is definitely more than relevant for young people and for the society.
Yeah, wow, that's great to hear. Thank you, Thea. Sounds really cool. So you're probably really curious what they look like, the youth goals. And of course, we printed them out for you, so you can have a look and you can take them home and you can use them. So I'm looking this direction. Maybe you can hand them out.
They're still going to be hot and freshly printed.
Yeah, directly out of the printer. Okay, yeah, just a second. They're still traveling, okay. Okay, in that case, we have a backup plan, and that is Georg Feiner, who's also on stage with us. He's not only a backup plan, sorry, Georg. He was the plan anyway, but we thought we can talk to him now and not later, when the attention is still here, because the attention is going to be on the youth goals afterwards, of course. Okay, Georg, so you're the national coordinator of the structured dialogue in Austria. This means you're going to be responsible, or you are responsible, for the conference in Austria in fall. So what are we going to do there, and how are we going to make use of the youth goals that we created here?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity already now to give you a little bit of sneak peek on what's next. Yeah, we are super excited in Austria to bring this process forward. We have achieved a lot here already, and we want to facilitate this process together with all of you.
Sorry, could you wait a bit with handing out the youth goals? Could you wait a bit?
Yeah, it's tricky. Attention to youth goals or attention to me speaking. Okay, I will try to do my best. Yeah, what we have planned on how to take it forward is that in the conference that's there early September, some of you will be there. I hope to see familiar faces, and what we planned there is to put an emphasis on a common way to communicate to the outside world what we have achieved with the youth goals. They are not only for us, they are there to be spread all across Europe. We have plans to make little illustrations, to have also visual identity to the youth goals. That's what's coming up. Then at the conference, we invite everyone there to plan also how to bring them to an implementation level on the national state and also on European level in the European working group. So in all the levels, we invite everyone to use what's there and to plan a step forward, how we get ahead. And yeah, with this we want to make the biggest impact that has ever been done with results of structured dialogue. So we want to be heard, we want to be to give out, to spread a strong message, and I think the Austrian conference will facilitate this aim. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a bold aim. Yeah, really looking forward to that. You're going to also see Thea and me again there, if you're coming. Okay, so thanks a lot, Georg, for the sneak preview. So now I saw that the youth goals are here, so please start handing them out now so everybody can have a copy.
Oh yeah, also a voice from the audience. There is an online version as well. You can already have a look. Like the youthgoals.eu website is coming up very soon, but for the moment, for the time being, you can access it on the youthconf.at. AT for Austria. Austria is taking it forward, and you find the website filled with all the same content, all the content that we produced here on the conference.
Yeah, thank you, Georg. Digital version. Now we would like to give you 5 minutes just to look through them, to read through them, to take them in. Okay. So you looked through them shortly. There's going to be enough time for you to read through them. So first of all, I would like to ask you for a round of applause for yourself and for this work you did. So now we have some questions for you. And the first question is, we would like to know, maybe you can think a bit about it, how will you use the youth goals in your work, in your country, back in your country? Maybe you can exchange with your neighbor. How will you use it? So we're going to give you just 30 more seconds to exchange with your neighbor, and then we're going to take some voices from the audience. Okay, thank you. Now we are ready for some voices from the audience. So, how are you going to use the youth goals? Josip from Croatia, Tia told me.
Sorry for this. Who here was in the group regarding environment and sustainability? Can I just, maybe someone raise hands or something? So how do you feel about printing everything on paper, single sheets? Who here was in the gender group yesterday? So how do you feel about go-go dancers, just female ones, everything? Yeah, only females. Who here was in the youth participation group yesterday? So how do you feel about youth delegates having to pay their own tickets to fly here, and eventually they'll get reimbursement, of course? Yeah, I mean, I'm really frustrated because I think we created something amazing, but at the same time, all of us, not all of us, but we here have examples of us not following these rules, these goals, these targets. And we expect from others who don't create this, who don't care about youth problems, to accept this. And I'm really passionate about this, and I want every and any of us, and I'll go to my country and I'll advocate. I'm part of the national working group for next youth strategy. I'm going to push this on every meeting, but I also want all of us to do it in everyday life, not just to push it on others. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Josip, for raising awareness for that. Okay, there's another voice. Pete. From Cyprus. Tia knows everything.
Yes, I do come from Cyprus, but I'm representing the European Working Group. Well, building up on that, thank you. I think that the mistakes that we saw in Bulgaria and a little bit the chaos we experienced through the European Youth Conference is an inspiration for us, actually, to go back and to actually, what we have created as representatives of the young people and as experts, to assure that next presidencies or next ministries will do as good as Bulgaria did, but also better, taking into consideration our work yesterday, because indeed some things were quite shocking when it comes to me personally working in the equality group, seeing 4 beautiful ladies dancing, however, not alone empowering and youth-friendly in the aspect of what we have created today. And my personal work within the goals is to work in the European level, in national level, and local level to ensure that every policy and decision maker can take into consideration and lead somewhere that young people are taken into the process to lead to the results of these goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there another voice from the audience? Oh, back there.
Hi everybody, my name is Nengi Benster, I'm representing Ireland. I'm going to quote somebody who said, I have a dream. And I have a dream that someday the issues surrounding mental health will not be spoken about with so much shame and stigma. I have a dream that someday mental health issues will be taught in classrooms, in primary schools, and secondary schools in our different countries. And young people will not struggle to seek help when they really do need help. I have a dream that someday, the same way young people are taught how to wash their hands and how to take a shower, they will also be taught in classrooms how to take care of their mental health.
Thanks a lot. One more voice, or oh yeah, that's still one. Please, Frederick.
Hello, thank you. Good morning. I think we all had a good few days now. I think we had put a lot of positive energy in these youth goals, and a lot of young people have come here to Sofia, to Bulgaria, to have sometimes their frustrations, but also their positive energy put into something really concrete. But at some point you have to know that it's no longer up to us. And I hope that leaders from our nations, and also at European level, the Commissioner, that is, I hope so, coming here today as well, is now taking those youth goals and put them into practice. Everybody knows the added value of the Sustainable Development Goals, but those can only be achieved if also the government leaders are doing something about it. So this should not be an empty shell. We worked a lot about these goals, and now it's up to our leaders to also take a step forward. We spoke up, now it's time for them to speak up, and I hope that later today we will get an answer for the European Commission as well, and that they take this seriously, and that they put this into practice, that this does not remain an empty shell and just a piece of paper. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we really want to make this active, impactful. Yeah, so big expectations on you, Georg, and on us.
Yes, that's great to hear. On another issue, it was a bit late yesterday when we put all this together, so I'm very sorry. There is one mistake in number 4, a doubling of a target. Of course, you will get the corrected version distributed afterwards. There's one target missing, and this will be corrected.
Okay, thank you, Georg. Okay, so to have some more input for Georg, I would like to ask you, the audience, another question, and this is, you can also exchange with your neighbor for like 30 seconds, a minute. What do you still need so you can use those youth goals? What do you still need? Okay, so somebody raised their hands already, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Dario from Macedonia, representing YPR Macedonia as a focal point in the network. We're on a great pathway, and I'm really proud of all of our work. Actually, what we need now is a common ground where we are going to unite and with the policymakers and implement all these goals with the leaders from our national countries. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Back there, another voice.
well, a bit more practical about funding would be great. I mean, if we want to implement something, we need money to do that. I don't know who's listening, but yeah, it would be great to have more funding for European projects, for European youth projects.
All right, money, yes.
Just a little reaction to what you said, opportunities to speak to leaders. There will be one of those opportunities also during the Austrian conference, because for the first time we also have a ministers meeting at the conference. So you will have the chance to meet some of your country's ministers during the Austrian Youth Council. This is a unique opportunity also to discuss youth goals with them. And I'm looking forward to how this will work out.
Yeah, cool. Exciting. Please, there's another question. There's another voice from the audience.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vlad from Romania. I think that will be very useful to have a monitoring process of implementation of the goal at European level. And maybe next year when we'll meet in Romania to check the progress and to see that if we have problems to implement the goals or not, or what can we do better to be sure that these goals will be really implemented for young people.
And maybe just to challenge or to ask also DGs, how do you see these goals? Or what do you need? What do you need from us, also from young people? How can we work together, not only here at the conference, but also in the future to actually implement those youth goals? Would anyone be willing to share?
Any DGs here?
Yeah.
DGs' voices matter.
Yeah, actually I think it's very simple. We just have to bring this paper back to our country, our youth organization, meet as many young people as we can, and try to concretize these aims, and try to change it to coins, actually.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have one more question to, oh, there's a hand raised back there. Another voice. Microphone is coming.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for printing these goals in a paper. It's so 20th century, but thank you still. I want to take something from all of you. I think it's important to raise awareness how crucial things are, like this printing on paper. We don't have that luxury anymore, so it's important to think about it. We all have computers, internet, laptops, so let's use technology of the 21st century and let's make those goals count. Thank you for your attention.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay, one more voice, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alma. I'm from Latvia, from the ministry, but as well young people myself still. And of course, I will take this paper to my bosses, to the Minister of Youth, and we will discuss it. But then I can't stop thinking about how everyone, each of us here, you youth leaders, DGs, people with the idea, how you will go back home and every day on your daily work, how you will work with this idea, how you not only live here in Sofia, how your own will make sure this goal is going to be achieved, it's going to be implemented. And this is what I would love to see when we go to Romania next time, after Austria, after this trio. And then we see, and you can look back how I was responsible, me as a youth leader, as a people with the idea and two hands to work for that, how I achieved these goals and how I made them successful and true, and not only wait for the ministers or the higher representatives to do it for us, but do it as ourselves. I believe we can do it. Thank you.
Okay, so actually we're already at the next question. What else is important to say at this point? Are there any more voices from the audience? What are you excited about? Okay, there's one voice here, okay.
Hello, my name is Jan from Denmark, and I don't want to sound pathetic, but I think when we dig into these topics, we get lost in details sometimes. But the big picture, the vision, let's remind ourselves of that we are sitting here learning to talk to each other, argue about our shared wishes, fears, needs, instead of fighting about resources, killing each other, which generations before us have done. And this really, I think, is something, even though maybe some of these goals won't be implemented, some will, some others won't, we have changed history by this. Every time we meet and talk, instead of killing each other, we change history, and that is, I think, truly inspiring.
Okay, any other voice?
Last chance.
Last chance, last chance. Please.
Hello everyone, I'm Mercy. I'm actually from Albania. We are not an EU country, but looking forward to it. But what I would say is that youth people in every country face the same challenges, maybe on different levels, but we face the same things. And finally, we are not seen as a problem, but we are seen as a solution, and let's work closely together, let's build friendship, and let's build bridges between each other so we can work together on the same goals. So that's, I think, what this conference main point and main goal was, and thank you for that.
Okay, one more, please.
Hello, everyone. There are three of us that are representing the deaf community here. There is a representative of the deaf youth section of Bulgaria, then the coordination team, and me from the EUDY. I really want to thank you for having invited us to this conference, because in Estonia, in the first conference, there were no youth delegates. So, we know that in this conference there was a challenge to provide accessibility, and we wanted to give our consultation and our advices, but there were some misunderstandings. First of all, we need interpreters to have accessibility, but also real-time captioning, subtitles for hard of hearing people. We already told that to the organizers, but it didn't happen. Then, as the conference was becoming closer, it influenced the registration process and then the process of getting pre-conference information. And these were the obstacles that we had to solve for the next conference, because we want to participate in this conference and to be equal with all the other delegates. Therefore, I would like to ask the organizers of the next conference, we are really happy that you contact us, and we will really be happy to be part of this conference. I would also like to tell you something, because you see, we have interpreters, and you can think that, oh great, there is accessibility. But I think you saw the first day that the screens with the interpreters were on the side, not in the front. And it is a part of exclusion, but we told that to the organizers, and they moved the screens in front, and we want to thank for that. We would also like to say something about the workshops yesterday. We had one interpreter for every working group, but it's impossible for an interpreter to work all the time, all day, and we need at least 2 interpreters to give them time to rest as well, to change. But therefore, we had to step out of some parts of the workshops to give them time to rest, and it influenced our participation. So at the end, we would like to also thank and to congratulate for some things for the Bulgaria, because it was first step, but we would also encourage you to invite also other groups of people with disabilities, wheelchair users, blind people, etc. But we would like to thank you for this first step that was made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot for all your comments. Thanks a lot for your critical comments. Thanks a lot for your critical awareness, raising awareness about all these issues we have, all those things that are not going perfect. We know we're not there where we want to be, but we're trying, and we're getting there slowly, one step after another. And we're very glad that together at this conference we made these youth goals, we made these 11 youth goals, which are like we're aiming high. The idea was to be visionary, and I think we've achieved that to a large part. And thank you very much for that. And I would really like to raise the spirit a bit and want to make you think about where we're heading and where we're going to and what we're trying to achieve. And I think there's a lot of work ahead of us, but it's great that we're all here together, that we're all engaged, that we're all working on this together, and going to go on working on this in Austria. And I'm really looking forward to have you there, and I'm really looking forward to see what happened in the meantime, what changes you made, what we can really bring to the ground. So yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so that's from our side all so far. There will be a coffee break now until 10:30. I think it's 10 now. Yeah, almost 10. 10:30, so be back at the plenary at 10:30. Is that all announcements? I think that's all, yeah?
Yeah. Please try to be on time, because Commissioner Tibor Navracsics is also joining us, and we're going to have a citizens dialogue with them. And after this, we are going to follow straight to the group photo. So when this moment comes, please try to be on time with the proposals that we're offering to you. And then, of course, we're going to hand this conference over to the Austrians. Yeah.
Thanks.
The commissioner is coming, right? Yeah. Or I just announced the person who is now.
Gloria.
Be there as well. Oh, I want to be there as well. No, I want to be there.
You rock my life. You're all my life. Nobody can bring you down.
Good afternoon and welcome to this panel dedicated to civil citizens dialogue, which is an opportunity for the representatives of the European Commission to meet citizens. We will have an opportunity to talk to Tibor Navracsics, who is the Commissioner for Youth, Culture and Sport. And we also have Jayatma Wickramanayake, a remarkable young woman, and also Mr. Krasen Kralev, the Minister for Youth and Sport of Bulgaria. We would like to thank all of you for organizing this forum for so many young people whose voices we are hoping to hear today. The dialogue will last for approximately 45 minutes. We are going to discuss the future of Europe and particularly the role of young people. This is one of the most meaningful initiatives. There is no predefined agenda. You set the topics, and I would like to invite you to participate proactively, ask questions. The Commissioner has visited Bulgaria on many occasions and has had many discussions with citizens, particularly on youth issues, and this is your opportunity to ask questions. So please welcome Mr. Tibor Navracsics, the Commissioner. Also Jayatma Wickramanayake, the UNICEF regional, the special UN envoy, and Mr. Kralev, the Minister of Youth and Sport. You have the floor. Mr. Navracsics, you're currently working to develop a future strategy on youth in Europe. You've been engaged in many debates. You talk to young people. I think you have already engaged more than 65,000 young people from all corners of Europe. Can young people here today hope that their ideas, the goals they have formulated, will be taken on board by the Commission in developing the strategy?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Actually, luckily, it's not an individual exercise, but it's a collective exercise. So we are working on the, thank you very much, on the next youth strategy of the European Union. And I think there's a consensus in this room and outside this room as well that there are some really fundamental and serious challenges ahead of us, and we have to confront these challenges. Let me group those challenges into two very broad categories: political challenges and economic challenges. Of course, young people who are at the beginning of their own autonomous and responsible way of living have to face several challenges, but probably these two, the social, societal, political challenges and economic challenges are the most important. So our new EU youth strategy wants to give medium and longer term answers to challenges. We would like to address those fundamental challenges of extremism, of the radicalization of the marginalized young people, how to make social integration and social inclusion more efficient and more successful, and how to secure better opportunities for the young people on the labor market. For me, these two broad groups are not isolated from each other. They are strongly interrelated because the level of the social cohesion in a society determines the level of competitiveness, of future competitiveness. So the whole complexity is about young generations, and with this youth strategy, we would like to address all elements of this whole complexity.
Господин министър, конференцията наистина се занимава с много практически и
The conference deals with a number of practical issues. For example, the goals of EU policies on youth in the next few years. What do you think is the significance of the work done here in these last few days? Young people are the most critical segment of society. Mr. Kralev, young people and youth are actually a priority for the Bulgarian presidency. Of course, our expectations in terms of the outcomes of this conference are very high. We have 250 delegates from 14 countries, including our friends from the Western Balkans. Their participation here is very important because it shows that young people can make decisions that are going to determine the future policies of the EU for many years to come by working together. And I think that these 11 goals that have been set in the last 2 days are of enormous importance. We will present them to the European Commission, and we will do our best to make sure that they are taken on board and included in the future EU strategy. This is the first time when young people have been given a real opportunity to make an input, and I would like to congratulate everybody who actively participated in the debates in the last 2 days and achieved a truly remarkable result, which is going to be a very solid foundation for the future, a very stable foundation for future youth policies in Europe. And Mrs. Vikramanaike, as a young person who has had a remarkable career, my question is, which policies and which steps can reassure young people that they have truly been given a chance? What matters in this respect? How do you know that your opinion has been taken on board?
Thank you very much. A very good morning, everyone. Before going into your question, I also just want to say hello and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this very important discussion that you're having, which will shape the youth policies and strategies in your region for the next number of years. It's a privilege to be here. This is the first time that I'm meeting a collective number of young people from this region after my appointment as the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. So again, I'm very happy to be here. Why I'm here is because of a number of reasons. For the first one, as I said, to meet young people from the region, but secondly and most importantly, we at the United Nations is also drafting our youth strategy that will shape the United Nations work with and for young people in the next 3 years and hopefully beyond. So I'm very interested from learning from your experiences what works and what doesn't work. And to take that knowledge back to the UN and to see how best we can incorporate the inputs that are coming from you to the discussions of the EU, but not only stopping from there, but perhaps I can also make that contribution to the inputs to the youth strategy at the UN as well. And particularly on your question about what kind of policies work for young people, the only kind of policies that will work for young people are the policies that young people, they themselves shape. And this could be by people that they elect to represent, who make policies for them, but most importantly, the direct inputs that young people give through the consultations like the ones that the minister mentioned, but also in recognizing areas which are important and emerging to their constituencies. I was very impressed to hear how all of you and the 50,000 other young people contributed peace and security as a priority area for you, and this is a clear indication of how we as young people do not shy away from talking about topics that that may be not affecting us directly today, but will definitely be affecting us in 5 to 10 years. So my answer to your question is the policies that will work for young people are the policies that young people themselves shape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Сега е време за вашите въпроси.
Now it is time for you to ask questions. You have the floor for questions. Don't let the older ones like me to be asking questions. We can always be asking many questions, but don't let us take up this opportunity.
Denmark. First of all, thanks to all of you for being here. My question to you, Minister Kralev. What will be happening in the field of youth policy in the future now? So where are you going with the 11 youth goals that we produced here? Thank you.
What will be the future of the results of the conference here that you produced? What was the...
Yeah, exactly. What will be the things you will go forward with now in the field of youth policy, and what you will do with the 11 youth goals that we produced here?
Okay, thank you.
One of the top priorities on the presidency agenda of Bulgaria is a cooperation in the area of youth. It is very important for the Bulgarian presidency that the framework be translated into a strategy. In order to achieve this, the 11 youth goals, as you have identified them during the last 2 days, will be forwarded to the European Commission. These 11 goals will be incorporated in the basis for drafting the European Commission for Youth. The European Council has stated its expectations with respect to the Youth Conference. On the one hand, flexibility, on the other hand, meeting the needs and the expectations of young people. Furthermore, this should serve as a good fundamental for future sustainable youth-related policies. Therefore, identifying the 11 youth goals, I'm reiterating, will be of paramount importance for drafting the youth strategy. We commit to presenting the 11 goals to the European Commission. I can assure you that all the 11 goals will be translated into the European Commission strategy. Thank you, Minister. Other questions?
Fabian from the Austrian delegation. I also have a question to you, Minister. What are your plans regarding the European Solidarity Corps file? Do you envision to finalize it during the Bulgarian presidency?
И още един... Да, разбира се.
I can answer it if it's okay for you. However, I'm not a minister, I'm just a commissioner. But because it's mostly of my responsibility. You know, there is a rotating presidency, which means that they are responsible for 6 months, and it's up to the European Parliament, actually, how the whole procedure will go on. We're going to have the first trilogue next Tuesday, as far as I know. So this is one of the most important turning points of the legislative procedure. However, unfortunately, the European Parliament is still lagging behind our original schedule, because when we, I mean the European Commission, adopted the draft legislation on the European Solidarity Corps, the original deadline for the European Parliament was the end of last year. So they are still debating the draft. It's on the floor of the European Parliament, but we're going to have the first trilogue on next Tuesday, and I hope that the whole legislative act will be adopted during the Austrian presidency in the second half of the year.
Ако обичате микрофон тук, защото... Или ако имаме два, моля ви, дайте ми още един микрофон, защото аз тук имам видимост към залата. Само един, добре. След това сте вие. Заповядайте.
Hello, so my name is Silja and I come from the Finnish Youth Council, and my question is for Commissioner Navracsics. As we have seen in the youth goals, we have not reflected the future of the structured dialogue there, but therefore I would like to ask you, what is the vision the Commission has for the future of the structured dialogue? Thank you.
Благодаря.
Yeah, thank you for the question. On the one hand, I think the structured dialogue is a very successful channel for you, for articulating the needs of the young people, and for us for getting those inputs which could be very relevant during a decision-making process. On the other hand, I think we have to think about how to revamp the whole procedure, because sometimes it is rigid, and sometimes it is too much institutionalized, I would say. So while we have to keep all the upsides of the structured dialogue, and we have to keep the structured dialogue as a platform, we have to go beyond the institutional limits of the structured dialogue, and we together, I mean you and us, have to find a common voice with those young people who are probably simply disappeared from the official and institutionalized channel of the structured dialogue. So we have to identify those marginalized and frustrated groups who has no voice at the moment in the structured dialogue, and that's why I would promote some more flexible ways of the structured dialogue. So we are working on that, and as soon as we have results, so we will share with you, and we will discuss it. And I hope that we can make the whole process of the structured dialogue more flexible in the future.
Благодаря. Заповядайте.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Panagiotis from Youth for Exchange and Understanding. We were running part of the European dimension of the structured dialogue. I have 3 points. One is for the Ministry as representative of the Council. One, your role as hosting the conference, and then for Mr. Navracsics when it comes to the strategy itself. First point, following up the outcomes on the conference, what do you see as Bulgarian presidency giving over to the Council? With your experience, I don't know if you read the goals or not. Second, there were several comments before, which unfortunately you were not here to listen to, but I hope that your team will transfer, and I'm here as well to do so. There's a lot of misgap between you hosting the event and us being here to have our input for the presidency, and there was a lot of issues when it comes to gender, when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to inclusion. There were things mentioned by the devs. Based on the point of the marginalized youth, I find it very bad to ask participants to cover their traveling to join here, and then they would get reimbursed. Personally, my tickets were not expensive, but I had to pay for them. And if somebody else doesn't have the money to come here, but we ask them to come, it kind of seems oxymorous when we say we're inclusive.
How it works usually? I'm sorry, but
your traveling is covered and you come. Either you give the money to the body, to the National Youth Council, to YFJ, and they cover your expenses. You don't ask the organizations or the young people to cover their travel to join at your event. If I'm hosting a party at my house, I'm not going to tell people, okay, guys, my party's in Brussels, buy your tickets and come. I will try to go to their place with my money and find a budgetary way that I will not be a burden to the people I invite. I will see their limits and things, and specifically when we say we want to be inclusive, when we want to engage more young people with difficulties, I will not put an extra barrier to them, assuring, however, that they do come. That's what I find as a problem. And sorry for taking it long. The third point, sorry, is when it comes to the youth strategy, you mentioned a lot of the marginalized youth and things. We really try to be inclusive, and we really try to make a lot of things as youth organizations and with non-organized youth parallel. What would you do with the youth goals that we created, which I believe represent a huge amount of youth, marginalized or not, privileged experts, etc. US Commission now, because it was mentioned before, we worked for one day very intensively to reach to these goals. What do you do now as decision makers? What do you do now as adults, having the power on what we worked on, and that we don't each one more year without having results? Youth strategy is a point, but what are the extra steps to assure that these goals won't be an empty process that young people did but nobody took into account? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. Let me start with the last question. What can we do? First, we adopt the European Youth Strategy, which is a common denominator for the member states. As you may know, youth policy is one of the policies at European level which belongs to the principle of subsidiarity. That means that member states has an exclusive competence doing that. We can encourage and we can support member states in implementing the main elements of the youth strategy, and we can have some, and as we do have some dedicated projects in Erasmus+. So we've already had some calls for social inclusion and social integration. I just funded a special sports award. It is called Be Inclusive, which is social inclusion via sports. And the first event of handing over these awards was last November, I think, or last October in Brussels. And I do a lot also in youth policy to fund those NGOs and those local communities who really who are really active in social integration, regardless of the kind of marginalization or exclusive or exclusive position. On the other hand, you might write that inclusion, social inclusion, partly is a problem of funding, and it's an expensive exercise. That's why I'm not only hosting you when there's a youth event, but I myself, I go to local communities and consult local communities. I was the very first European Commissioner to visit Molenbeek, for instance. It's approximately 1 kilometer from the Berlaymont, from the headquarters of the European Commission, but nobody visited before me. And I visited Varna. We had a citizens' dialogue last year in Varna with Minister Kralev. I met the young people there, but I also visited Stockholm, Madrid, Rome, and some smaller towns outside the capitals, because it's cheaper than invite you to different places in Europe and to pay the bill. And on the other hand, it's my personal experience to meet people on the ground and to learn from there. I think it is a very important, sometimes very meticulous exercise to collect all the bits and pieces of your everyday experiences. But that's the only way how I can build up a comprehensive picture about the state of the young people and everyday conditions of the young people. I still have 1.5 years in my mandate to go and to deliver, and I hope that we can work on those projects together. We are now launching a free travel scheme for young people. However, it's very limited. I mean, the funding, again, is very limited. But again, this is one more opportunity for you to travel across Europe, to look around, to find friends, people, to build up communities, regardless of your social, religious, ethnic, or other background, because I believe that we have to build up a community of communities at European level, and you are an essential part of that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Заповядайте. Въпрос тук.
You have the floor.
We answered or no? Okay.
Окей. Моля ви само кратко, защото времето много...
Please be brief. I understood that you were discussing travel expenses. I think that all expenses will be reimbursed. The problem, but I do agree that being given travel money in advance is better, because otherwise various scheduling conflicts arise. But in this particular case, this was the only possible solution for a number of reasons, but I would like to assure you that everybody will have their travel costs reimbursed.
Bulgarian Youth Council. I would just like to say that I support, and I think a lot of other young people in this room as well, what our colleague Panayotis just said. During this week, or these few days, we did saw some discrepancies between the youth goals and what actually was happening, but that was not my question. I would like to use the opportunity to have the UN Envoy on Youth here and the Commissioner. A lot of the national youth councils are working with a program called UN Youth Delegates. And I think it is also very important that the European Union, as one, has representatives within UN. So maybe a question, what can we do that every country, that every youth council or youth organization has someone representing the opinions of young people on the UN level? And then the second question would be to the Commissioner, what would you do or what will you do so the opinions of young Europeans, not specific countries, are represented even more on the UN level, because we do appreciate the involvement of European Youth Forum in the UN though, but still, yeah, we would like to be a bit more present there. Thank you.
Thank you. Заповядайте за отговор.
Thank you. I was actually going to address that in my statement at the closing plenary, but no, that's definitely something that I'm very much willing to work together with the member states in your region. But to also tell you that when we compare the different regions that are represented at the UN, EU has the largest number of youth delegates that are coming every year, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. There's much more to be done. For the UN Youth Delegate Program, there is a toolkit that's developed by the UN. Very happy to share that with you, but there's also a toolkit that's developed by the UN Youth Associations, the WAFUNA, to guide civil society and youth-led organizations to do advocacy and lobbying to establish such program. The importance and also the challenge on the other side of the UN Youth Delegate Program is that it is a member state program, and you really need the buy-in from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have a youth delegate or two or more, and to not just to have a youth delegate with a D badge coming to New York, but really to let them go into negotiations, to let them speak on behalf behalf of their countries, on behalf of the young people of their countries. Another issue that when it comes to the increasing of youth delegate program is funding, of course. We know that some member states select youth delegate and ask them to go find funding themselves from either private sector or from universities and other partners that sometimes can be conflicting to the values and ideals that they want to represent at the UN. We also have a fund established in UN DESA to support youth delegates who do not have financial capacity to attend, but unfortunately there's $0 in that fund because none of the member states have contributed to that fund. But I'm very happy to share the advocacy material and everything else that we've developed, and if needed, to talk to the ministers and the relevant partners in your countries to advocate on your behalf to establish such programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just very briefly, because time flies, but that's a very difficult question, because what I can represent at global level is the European added value, because all of those things are usually brokered down along national lines. I mean, you're citizens in a member state, and you're a part of the political life of a member state. However, me as a commissioner of the European Union, I have to represent something which is common for the young people in Europe. The first thing in my mind is Erasmus and all the projects and the idea of Erasmus, students' mobility, and the European dimension of your life, which can be represented at global level. So I would be happy to do that. And this is the very first occasion, actually, that we have a UN representative in an EU youth conference or level. So I hope that this is only the first step and not the last step. So we can develop a good cooperation and a close cooperation in the future, and I will be happy to do that and represent you at global level. Thank you.
Thank you. Моля ви кратък въпрос.
Yes. One, Mercy from Albania. This is the very first time young people from Western Balkan are being part of such decision-making process. And firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the Ministry of Youth and Sport of Bulgaria and regional UNFPA office, who have finally given a voice to active young people, part of this region who has never been heard before till now. This is a real-life example of what inclusion should look like and how empowerment of young people in decision-making should be. So my question to the EU Commissioner is, how do you reach and how do you address issues that reflect young people who are part of this region but till now have never been before heard?
Okay, and one more question, and then we have to be brief in the answers because we are...
Hi, my name is Nengi. I'm representing Ireland. I'll be talking to you about the youth check policy. I'm not sure if you've heard about that. It's something new to check that every policy that is made within Europe is checked to ensure the long-term effect on young people. So I'll give you an example. It's like a mother buying a house. So she'll ask herself, if I'm paying for this, what is the long-term effect of my decision on my children on the long run? My question is this. Within Europe, when policies are made, do you check for the long-term effect of these policies in the lives of the young people, the youths who are the future leaders of tomorrow? Is there anything done to check that every policy that is made within Europe is ensured to make sure that the effect on the youth is not negative and it's positive and it's going to help them take over from you in the future?
Thank you. И още един въпрос тук. Моля.
And one last question.
Mario Corolia, I'm representing YPR in Macedonia as a focal point in the network. As you may know, we were working on the Sustainable Development Goals. I have a question to the Youth Envoy. How are you going to push the process for the EU Youth Goals in the UN as they are similar to the SDGs as we are working on in the mission? Thank you.
Thank you. Заповядайте. Заповядайте за отговор.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, this definitely is a learning experience for me as we are in the process of drafting the UN's youth strategy. So I can promise you that I bring these discussions and feed this, the goals and the indicators that you identified into that process as an input coming from this region. But more broadly, as you said, we need to finish up. I also want to touch up on what our friend here mentioned on two main issues. The first one is, as the Commissioner said, inclusion is expensive, someone somewhere said, but that is also not an excuse for us to not do that. So at the UN, we find it extremely difficult to have the voices of the most marginalized and the most vulnerable heard. I've been in the UN for 8 months, and I feel like we are always kind of preaching to the converted, bringing the same voices to the table all the time, but not really reaching young people where they are. But I also think that this is a real good time to make that change happen, because at the UN we are discussing about reforming the way we work, about the development system reforms, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, to decentralize the work that we do, to go more into the regional level, but most importantly at the country level, to better engage with young people, have young people as our implementing partners and advisors and equal partners on the ground in the work that we do, and most importantly to speak in a language that everyone understands, not just young people. And the second part is on the follow-up. In most of our processes, including the Sustainable Development Goals, we consulted young people. There were I think about 5 million young people contributed through the My World survey, through the open working groups, through platforms like the European Youth Forum, to tell the world leaders what sustainable development goals should look like. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to include young people as much in the implementation process of SDGs or the voluntary national review process or any type of review process that we have. So one of the things that I'm trying to work with is to work with governments when they are reporting back to the United Nations on the implementation of sustainable development goals, to include youth councils, youth delegates as part of that review process. We have some very interesting examples actually from this region. In the Netherlands, for an example, the National Youth Council gets to write the one chapter in their voluntary national review to the United Nations, and countries like Denmark mobilize their youth delegates to go into communities and collect inputs from youth organizations to contribute to that process. So we hope that these best practices can be scaled up and also replicated in other parts of your region as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Господин Еврокомисар.
Commissioner, Minister, you have 1 minute for final remarks.
Okay.
Answer, yeah.
It's about the Western Balkans and your voice in the Western Balkans. I hear your voice because I take part quite often on events where the representatives of the Western Balkan countries and young generations of the Western Balkan countries are presented. For instance, 1 week ago, I took part on an event in Ljubljana where it was about the creative industries, and there was a lot of young people, representatives from the Albanian creative industry, for instance. But I think your question was about an institutionalized channel of articulation, and that's membership, of course. For Erasmus projects and for Creative Europe projects, there's an opportunity to take part in those projects if you are not a citizen of a member state as well. There are very active Western Balkan countries, for instance, FYROM, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, which is very, very active in both in Erasmus and in Creative Europe. And you can be a citizen of the EU, an honorary citizen of the EU, as a participant of an Erasmus or a Creative Europe project, or just taking part in mobility projects or schemes. You have to encourage your government to take more responsibility, to take more share in those cooperations, and you can be an active citizen of the EU. And of course, we are absolutely waiting for you as member states in the EU. We just adopted 2 days ago the perspectives of enlargement. Albania is one of the new countries, and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, the other one. So I think at least we now have the perspectives of the enlargement. We have to work on that together to make it a real achievement, but I think that's the future scenario, and that's a realistic future scenario. Thank you.
Моля ви, господин министър, наистина.
Minister, I kindly ask you just one sentence, one final sentence. I would like to thank all of you for having participated in the youth conference in Sofia. We, the Bulgarian Presidency, will be doing our best in order for your voice to be heard by the EU institutions, so that the outcomes from this conference will be at the core of the upcoming EU youth policies. Thus, you will contribute to shaping Europe's future. This youth conference will have a substantial impact on policy drafting in the EU. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for participating in this dialogue. We are pressed with time, but it has nothing to do with the topics of your goals. In Bulgaria, asking questions is more than welcome. As you can see, the members of the Bulgarian government are more than willing to answer questions. However, you are pressed with time as your conference is continuing and you're in for your family photo. I kindly ask you to walk out this part of the room, walk out from this gate. The other part of the room will be using the other gate in order for you to get together for the family photo.
European Youth Conference begin. We would really appreciate if we can start. Can we please take our seats now? We're about to begin. Dear friends, dear guests, dear youth policy makers, as you may already know me, I am Veselina, part of the Bulgarian Presidency team for youth, and it is my great honor and pleasure to have you here in Sofia. I hope you really enjoyed your time here. And now it is a true pleasure to welcome on stage our official guests today. Mr. Tibor Navracic, European Commissioner for Education, Culture, Youth, Sports at the European Commission. Mr. Krasen Kralev, Minister of Youth and Sports of Republic of Bulgaria. Ms. Jayatma Wikramanayake, United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. Please welcome on stage Ms. Alana Armitage, UNFPA Regional Director, Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Mrs. Eva Maidel, Member of the European Parliament. And Mr. Boyko Borisov, Prime Minister of Republic of Bulgaria. Okay. Mr. Tibor Navracic, can you tell us some words to address the young people here in Sofia? Please join us.
Prime Minister, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, dear all, I'm pleased to be here today. I would like to thank the Bulgarian Presidency, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and Bulgarian NGOs from the youth sector for their efforts in organizing this event. This conference comes at an ideal moment. The debate on the future of Europe is in full swing. Young people have to be at the heart of this debate. The Europe of the future is yours. We need to build a Europe that is resilient, a network of diverse, cohesive, and open communities. And to do this, we need to give young people a voice. Give them opportunities and the necessary skills and competencies to become active, independent citizens who take control of their lives, are ready to support others, and can make the most of the opportunities offered by a globalized, knowledge-driven world. The European Union offers such opportunities. In mid-May, I will put forward the new EU Youth Strategy, our framework for cooperation in the field of youth. This will be followed soon afterwards by our proposals for the future Erasmus programme and the European Solidarity Corps post-2020. I will share some thoughts on the new youth strategy with you today. And if I say that the time is ideal, it is also because this conference in fact contributes to fine-tuning our proposals. Over the last 2 days, you had a lot of discussions about youth-related issues and about the future of young people in Europe and beyond. This has resulted in specific recommendations, targets, objectives, and suggestions how to attain them. I am pleased to receive your contribution in the shape of the European Youth Goals. Your ideas will feed into our new youth strategy. We have in fact been listening to young people and to youth stakeholders for some time now, and the Commission has already taken steps to further empower young people, to help them engage and connect, and to ensure their voice is heard in other policy areas that are relevant to them. We have learned that young people and the youth sector see the need for a more focused approach. You would like us to help make it easier for young people to engage in their communities and in decision-making processes at all levels. You would like to have more opportunities to show solidarity, volunteer, and get involved in youth work. You have repeatedly called on us to reach out more widely, in particular to those with fewer opportunities. We have heard you, and we agree. We need to involve many more young Europeans, including those who feel excluded or left behind. Together, we will ensure that outreach and diversity become cornerstones of our future youth strategy. You have asked us to help ensure your voice is heard on the many issues that affect and interest you. Indeed, there is consensus on this. The views and aspirations of young people need to have their place across policies and strategies that matter to them. And we are ready to work with Member States to help boost stronger cooperation across policy areas at all levels of decision-making, to find synergies and complementarities. We also want to help make sure that young people can get more involved in the decisions that are taken at national and local level. Member States should, for example, encourage youth and other stakeholders to set up joint initiatives, for example, in education, employment, digital, sport, sustainability, and international cooperation. You have also asked for more transparency and a stronger monitoring framework with participatory governance. Finally, you have called for a clearer link between EU youth policy and related EU programs. We have taken these points into account while preparing our proposals. As your European Commissioner, I want to find ways to give you more of a say in EU policy making, to boost exchanges between young generations, political leaders, and policymakers. We have a number of instruments at our disposal, including the structured dialogue that brings us together at this conference. It has been very useful so far, but after 8 years, it is time to go further and make this dialogue even better, more inclusive, more open, and more efficient in terms of communication. We must do a lot more to reach a much wider audience of young people, especially those that haven't engaged in the dialogue so far. I believe that the future European Youth Dialogue should enlarge its outreach beyond youth organizations active in EU matters and engage a more diverse audience, including at local level. It should embrace new forms of participation, using, for instance, new technologies. This should make it easier to move beyond very rigid structures and enable more young people from all backgrounds to get involved. Our future European Youth Dialogue also needs to provide clear added value and yield results that are visible to young people themselves. Dear all, we want to do more to promote learning mobility, participation, active citizenship, social inclusion, and solidarity of young people. The youth strategy for the period after 2018 is one tool we want to use. Erasmus is another. It is already one of the EU's most successful instruments underpinning youth policy. In the future, we would like to double the number of those who take part in this program and to ensure we involve many more from disadvantaged backgrounds. We want to expand innovative ways of bringing young people together, whilst further building on well-tested formats such as youth exchanges and cooperation between youth organizations. We also want to create fresh opportunities for young people, regardless of their social or educational background. The Commission has started to implement a European Parliament proposal for an initiative providing free train tickets to young Europeans who turn 18 this year. With a budget of 12 million euros, it will provide an estimated 20,000 to 30,000 young people with a travel experience that will help foster a European identity and reinforce shared European values. And we will launch another new project later this spring. European Youth Together will connect young Europeans from different parts of the continent, enabling them to learn more about European values and about each other, and to experience what it feels like to be European. Finally, the European Parliament elections in 2019 will offer young people an excellent opportunity to shape the future of Europe and their own. I encourage all of you to spread the word and get out to vote. Your vote counts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Krasen Kralev, Minister of Youth and Sports of Bulgaria.
Уважаеми господин министър,
Distinguished Prime Minister, distinguished EU Commissioner, distinguished Mrs. Vikramanayake, distinguished Mrs. Armitage, dear young people here in the conference room and those who are online. Over the last several days, more than 250 young people from all parts of Europe have been contributing to producing a specific outcome from this youth conference. The Bulgarian presidency of the Council was the first one to have set as a priority young people and the future of Europe. Hence, the first European youth-related goals were identified. These goals will serve as specific recommendations to the European Commission in relation to the upcoming strategy. Sustainable and Green Europe, information and constructive dialogue, gender equality, connectivity and young people, high-quality employment for everybody, high-quality education, young people in depopulated areas, mental health and prosperity, including disadvantaged groups, involvement of young people in decision-making. All of these goals do prove that young people, together with everybody from Europe, Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership, can shape the future youth policies of Europe. We, the policy makers at the national and the EU level, bear the responsibility to use your goals in order to translate them into specific strategies and actions. In conclusion, I would like to thank our EU partners and the UN partners who, by means of their participation, have proved their commitment and their engagement to EU's youth policies. I deeply believe that the foundation we have set will be conducive to further fine-tuning the youth-related policies. Following Bulgaria's presidency, Bulgaria will continue and step up its efforts for including the Western Balkans by means of its partnership with all the relevant international organizations.
Ms. Eva Majdel, Member of the European Parliament. Yeah, and now I would like to continue this great final of our European conference for the first time in Bulgaria, Ms. Jayatma Wikranamayake, United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Minister, Honorable Commissioner, fellow young people, colleagues and friends. Very pleased to be here today since morning at this European Youth Conference. Those days it was believed that without a woman in a panel, there was no gender parity and it was unacceptable. And in this panel, I'm honored to be the young person, but no offense, Alana. But I also want to recognize you who are the real VIPs who have been involved in this process from the very beginning, from the consultations to coming here today and formulating these goals and targets which will affect your lives in turn. So thank you very much for being here and being the voice of your constituencies. Allow me to first congratulate the government of Bulgaria for their efforts to advance youth development in Europe during their presidency of the Council of the European Union. The importance of putting young people at the front and center of the debate of the future of Europe cannot be underestimated. Concluding this conference with 11 goals, the minister presented and formulated on the basis of consultations with 50,000 young Europeans is truly inspirational. And perhaps something United Nations can learn from you when it comes to consultations and consulting young people meaningfully. I'm not surprised to learn that it is young people who are the driving force behind expanding priorities. As I mentioned this morning, peace and security, which for the first time now is included in the European Youth Agenda because young people care, do not shy away from acknowledging challenges and engage with a world that is increasingly interconnected. We don't want to work in silos, but understand that youth issues must be mainstreamed and integrated across policy areas to really drive change and make difference. I'm of course also pleased to see that the 11 youth goals are in line with the Sustainable Development Goals that all of us together formulated, our common roadmap to a sustainable, equal, and most importantly, just and fair society for all. As the Secretary General's envoy on youth, promoting and facilitating meaningful youth engagement in global processes, such as the implementation and review of 2030 Agenda, is one of my biggest responsibilities and privileges. At the moment, a lot of my time is used to engage with the UN reforms process, and especially several youth-related, youth-focused work streams that I've been tasked to lead by the Secretary General. This includes discussions on how to expand avenues for youth participation in the intergovernmental processes, practices for strategic cultivation of youth leadership in the organization, and getting rid of the harmful practices that we have when it comes to employing young people in our own organization. And finally, how we are supporting and mobilizing youth-led action to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. The outcomes of these discussions will feed into the new UN system-wide strategy on youth that I mentioned this morning. And one of the main points that I'm bringing to this process within the UN is that we need to look at how we can better connect with regional platforms and organizations. I always say that we live in the best of the times to be a young person, but also the worst of the times. The best of the times is because we are the largest generation in the history of the world, and we are the most interconnected generation ever. We innovate, we collaborate, we bring solutions to the table. but also worst of the times, because we live in an era where youth unemployment is skyrocketing, many young people struggling with mental health issues, and a large number of young people on the move. Polarizing politics is dividing our societies, fake news is spreading, the space for civil society is shrinking, and multilateralism is on the firing line. The answers to this growing political cynicism and alienation, I firmly believe, is to increase the democratic conversation and get back to the values that truly unite us. As someone coming from outside Europe, in other parts of the world, there is a belief that everything is perfect in this region. But the reality is, just like anywhere else, young people in your region also faces many challenges, especially in meaningfully participating in decision-making processes that affect your lives. Therefore, it's our collective responsibility to break the trust deficit by demanding inclusion and actively contributing. If our inherent formal political institutions are not representative, let's carve out and create that space. Our quest to enhance democratic participation should also not just be a vertical exercise, but a horizontal exercise. Despite challenges, Europe is a front runner when it comes to having strong youth-led organizations and democratic representation, national youth councils, which are extremely strong, long-running youth delegate programs, and a regional youth organization, the European Youth Forum, that myself and my office have a very strong and heartfelt partnership with. I'm coming directly from the Commonwealth Youth Forum, where I had the opportunity to meet with youth delegates coming from 53 countries across 6 continents. And I was approached by a group of young South Asians who came up to me and said, in South Asia, we don't have a regional youth platform, and we really need to establish one. How can you help me? And the first thing that came to my mind was, you should talk to organizations like the European Youth Forum, the Pacific Youth Council, learn from them what went right and what went wrong, and see how you can also replicate those examples in the regions where our voices need to be heard the most. So, Luis, you might be getting a lot of calls in the next few days. As I said, as regional platforms, organizations, and networks, it's important how we work horizontally with other youth platforms, organizations, network, not just in our regions, but beyond that as well. So let me conclude. The government representatives, the commissioner, and other stakeholders who are present here today, I hope to see strong commitments going forward to invest in youth-led action, meaningful participation in key decision-making processes, and a commitment to young people as equal stakeholders and partners. It's not about handing young people a privilege, but conceding to our right to participate. And make no mistake, young people are already leading the change, but we don't want to, and we cannot do it alone. I look forward to seeing the youth goals reflected loyally in the coming EU youth strategy. And to all young friends and colleagues present here, I think the real work starts now. Your valuable contributions to this process should not stop here. As the youth goals now have been handed over to the Commissioner, it's our responsibility to keep the momentum and hold our governments accountable. I know you will participate actively in the upcoming elections as a first step to push this process forward. And I want to reaffirm you my support as the Secretary General's Youth Envoy to support you in this endeavor in whatever way I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for these kind words. Now, let's give the floor to Ms. Alana Armitage, UNFPA Regional Director, Eastern Europe and Central Asia.
Excellency, Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Excellency Minister of Youth and Sport, distinguished EU Commissioner for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Honorable Eva Mandel, MEP, and dear colleague and friend, the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and above all, dear young people and delegates who have so inspired me this week. It's such an honor for the United Nations Population Fund to have been part of this very historic conference. 2 days ago, when asked on the panel, I shared some reflections on positive changes that I have seen in the region in the past 2 decades or so. And what I highlighted was the phenomenal increase in youth leadership and influence in the region, and particularly what I saw, all of you, the young, strong, vibrant, diverse Europe, standing up for human rights and inclusion. And I am happy to see today that even after 2.5 days of very intense work and some very intense Bulgarian hospitality in the evening, you are still looking equally vibrant and equally strong and genuinely committed to change the region for young people and ready to implement the transformative youth goals and targets that you have come up with this week. Let me congratulate the government of Bulgaria, the EU, and all partners on this superb meeting for bringing youth as a priority within their leadership of the EU presidency and giving young people the opportunity to influence the European agenda. I would like to particularly commend Bulgaria for prioritizing inclusivity, giving young people from the Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership countries the opportunity to be heard and participate, as well as youth of different abilities and languages, including sign language. And I would like to thank Alex especially for giving us a tremendous lesson the other day. I think so much progress has been made in the region, but we're not there yet. We must continue to strive for that key aspiration of the Sustainable Development Goals, to work for those who have the least, who need us the most, and for whom power is the most elusive. Let me end on a positive note. This moment, as others have said, is a great opportunity, a moment of strong political leadership and commitment to the youth agenda, in the joint effort of Estonia, Bulgaria, and Austria to really set a visionary agenda for young people in the region. It's been an excellent opportunity for young people to work on setting the direction of their future development hand in hand with policymakers to set and influence. The European Youth Goals will serve and set standards for youth throughout Europe, but also for the rest of the world in the context of the SDGs. Making the right investments in young people's health, in their education, in their job opportunities will create an environment in which you, young people, can thrive, realize your rights, and fully contribute to society. In conclusion, on behalf of the United Nations Population Fund, the agency within the UN system which aims to ensure that every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled, we are delighted to have been a partner in this endeavor and to have formalized our partnership with the government of Bulgaria to step up our work in the Eastern Partnership countries and the Western Balkans. Together with our other UN sister agencies here, including UNICEF, who is present, we would like to tell you how committed we are to stand with you on this journey and to be part of the process to support your dreams and your aspirations for the rights of young people in Europe and beyond. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Armitage. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Eva Majdel, member of the European Parliament.
Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister, Commissioner, Minister, dear guests, I have seen so many wonderful and such deeply inspiring people that I can't tell you how happy I am to address you here today. We are indeed facing serious challenges, and we, the members of the youth group at the EP, firmly believe that only if we use the potential of the youngest, of the most colorful, of the most talented generation we have in Europe, will we be able to overcome the challenges that we are faced with today and will be faced with in the future. Europe has a demographic problem at an unprecedented level, and we do believe that by believing and supporting your talent, your dynamism, we'll be able to find those solutions that will allow us to ensure that every young person succeeds, making Europe more competitive, more resilient to the challenges of time. But again, this requires know-how, this requires experience, this requires a willingness to develop your talent, your potential, including with assistance of international, European and global organization. The Prime Minister of Bulgaria warned me to be brief in my address, so I will stay here. I will gladly answer any questions that you wish to raise, because I think that the policies of the European Commission, I have just seen Louis from the European Youth Forum, with whom we have been cooperating. We have an outstanding cooperation, but I should like to also say that I'm very impressed by the 11 very specific, concrete proposals, goals, which I think that we should embrace and should continue to fine-tune, including with the Bulgarian Ministry of Youth, which fought hard to put the issues of young people on the agenda, and because we firmly believe that young people are synonymous with the future. Thank you, Mrs. Maidel. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to give the floor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Boyko Borisov. Good afternoon, Commissioner, Special Envoys, young people. Today in Sofia, the Commissioner and I will take part in 3 parallel events. At a glance, they are all very different, but now listening to your goals, your aspirations and your priorities, I think that they lead up to the achievement of one goal. We have just been to see a platform for improving the digital literacy and skills of young people. At the same time, we are hosting a conference on the supercomputer and Europe returning in the top 10 destinations in terms of innovative technologies. The 3 supercomputers currently are in Japan, China, and in the US. And I think that we should do more to train people. The European Commission has already pledged 1 billion euros to create the infrastructure, processes, equipment, huge processing capacity, which will be able to manage smart cities, driverless cars without drivers, and I hope that you realize that it will not only it is not only the infrastructure that matters. What matters is people knowing how to use this. This is why your training, your education, your skills is what matters. And the third event is here, the youth conference, which has been an opportunity for you not to not only formulate your priorities, but become actively engaged in this process. But I would like to also touch on several problems. Our government, starting with local government, with the executive branch, with the legislative branch, has a number of young people in key positions, including members of the European Parliament, including ministers. When I was thinking about when I was thinking about what to say, I thought that I should first of all take a look at what you've identified, and I am very glad that you've identified, for example, problems such as having no or low skills, dropping out of school, people not being competitive, becoming marginalized, being more prone to the commission of crime, or requiring extensive welfare support. In Bulgaria, 20,000 children returned to school last year. Yes, most of them are from the Roma community, but there are also many others. In other words, these are 20,000 children who have never been to school. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. How would these children have been integrated into social life 10 years down the line? And Bulgaria is no exception. We have similar examples from Hungary, from Romania. So our government's top priority, ultimate priority, is education, including by digitalizing the process, including by initiatives such as ensuring better pay for teachers. And I would like to thank the Commission for supporting our investment in educational infrastructure. We are renovating schools, we are equipping computer rooms, and we are indeed very grateful. I would like to also share some other piece. I would like to also say that I'm delighted to see children, young people from the Western Balkans here today. The Balkans are not the backyard of Europe. The Balkans are one of the prettiest parts of Europe. From the Adriatic to the Black Sea, you have the Danube, you have mountains, you have valleys, you have four seasons, you have wonderful people living here. Unfortunately, we have had many wars break out in the Balkans, including recent ones, and I am no end grateful to the European Commission for giving the green light to negotiations with Albania and Macedonia. But Bosnia-Herzegovina, they still remain in the waiting room, and we should do more. Why? Because I did my best to convince my colleagues in Europe that we need a high-level summit, and we will have one here next month. After the Berlin process, the fact that the Western Balkans should once again be welcomed into the family of the European Union nations has not been disputed, because young people, talented people, skilled people migrate to Western Europe. We have elderly people here who are more difficult to retrain. We are laboring under the enormous challenges of a snowballing demographic crisis, and I think we should do anything to promote, to educate, to train, and to support young people in order to convince them to stay here. Because young people are not just the future of Europe, but they are the current, they are also the present of Europe. We have mayors who are barely 30 years old. I am particularly concerned about two problems. We see a fast increase in aggression in young people, bullying in schools, whether it's families letting their children down, whether it's the schools that are not doing enough, is a different topic, but I think that we should do more and do better in this area. And also the demographic crisis. We can be very smart, we can be very technologically developed, we can be anything we like, but what matters is our children. And you, as young people, I think should think very hard about having more than one child. Germany, I don't know whether you know, has a defense minister who is a woman, and she has 7 children, and I think we should all look up to such examples. The demographic crisis, of course, there are reasons such as, shortage of kindergartens, daycare, and other things. But I think that we need to think more seriously about these issues. I wish you every success in your future endeavors. The future does belong to you, but also the present belongs to you, so do your best to make it better. When I was your age, we were told what to do. Nobody came and asked us what we thought. It was even dangerous to think. I'm talking about the former communist regime. Maybe my colleague, the commissioner, will also have recollections. He will remember Budapest. He will remember the tanks out in the squares. We should be grateful that in a world of many wars and conflicts, we live in a peaceful world. Make it even better. And again, every success.
Сега нека аплодираме още веднъж нашите скъпи гости.
Okay, applause for our guests once again. Thank you. We will continue with the official closing session in a few minutes.
Guys, please don't leave the room, because we don't have a coffee break now. We're just saying goodbye to one of the official guests. So now we'll continue our official closing with more interesting and dynamic people. And I will give the word to one of our main facilitators during this great conference.
You're still very much invited to sit down and see the handover from Bulgaria to Austria. So we still have some more youth-up moments to finalize the conference in a really youth-friendly way, right? This is how we're used to it. So please take your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, youth delegates, DGs, everybody who are still willing to stay in this room, I'm happy to invite on the stage to join us the President of the European Youth Forum, Luis Alvarado Martinez, to say how does European Youth Forum see the youth goals and what's next. Luis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Taya. So, finally. So, I had prepared the speech, but a lot of the people who I was going to address that speech have left. So I just wanted, before I start that speech, I wanted to say a quick comment. This panel that just happened is an out-of-the-book example of what youth participation is not. This has been shameful, and I'm sorry to say, This is not the deal we have, and especially DG representatives here in the room. This is not the agreement we have in the framework of the structured dialogue of the EU. This is not the deal we have. You don't get to come here to talk to us standing here on a stage. You come here to debate with us on an equal level. We come here to develop solutions, common solutions to improve the lives of young people in Europe. Because let me remind you, without these young people in the room, your policies don't work. And what just happened is really the worst example of youth participation that we could have shown our UN partners on a global level. This region is supposed to be leading the conversation around youth participation around the world. And we just did not do that. So as the spokesperson of 150 million young people in this continent, I will not allow public institutions or governments or anyone to treat my constituents like this. You do not get to come here to talk to them. Come here and engage in meaningful youth participation with this, because if not, this will not work. Now, on a more positive note, because I did come here to say positive things, I did have some words for the Commissioner. I hope he comes back. But I know, I'm glad to have Eva and Jayatma here. But especially dear youth delegates and friends, dear, if there's representatives from the European Commission, Jayatma, UN Youth Envoy, Member of the European Parliament, and President of the European Movement International, Eva, and my beloved DGs, of course. It really is a great honor to be here as the European Youth Forum. It's a pity that the only young European elected representative got to be at the end. But the good news is that we have a brand new set of youth goals developed jointly by you and governments. So congratulations, because you've just started changing the biggest youth consultation process in the world. So congratulations to all of you. A quick thank you to the Bulgarian Presidency for setting this up. Obviously, there are learnings and we need to get better. We need to refine and optimize this process. But we really need that quality support from EU governments to make sure young people's voices are heard in these. The Bulgarian Presidency did put youth at the top of the agenda, so we hope that moving forward, other presidencies take that example and really engage meaningfully with young people. The fact that young people have decided these youth goals and that these youth goals should include policy aspirations beyond youth participation, volunteering, and youth organizations, but instead covering a wide variety of issues, shows that young people are interested and present in the current political debates around the future of Europe and ready to drive change. So now EU institutions and member states need to be as ready with young people to make sure that these young people are committed and recognized for their work. DGs, you already know how much I appreciate the work. You do know that I see you as our activists disguised inside the governments, but really, again, without you, this cannot work. You really need to engage meaningfully. You need to take this seriously, and you need to engage when things are not realistic and are not working out. You need to say it, because this process, you are so vital to this process that this cannot work without you. So thank you for the work you do, and I really hope that we continue engaging with you on this. The European Parliament elections have been mentioned already. They're approaching next year, in fact, almost a year from now. Those of you from the 28 member states have already had their voices heard today. But for the European elections, we need you not only to get out and vote, but also encourage all of your friends to come with you. You need to be the annoying one, pulling them out of bed on the morning of polling day. Be the one that starts the conversation about voting, that annoying one that always starts the conversation. And be the one that makes sure that their voices are heard. And especially be the ones through your activism and your youth organizations, the ones to tell the stories of how Europe has changed our lives for the better and why it's worth to vote for the European Parliament elections. In less than 1 month, the European Commission will present the proposal for the next EU strategy, and this strategy must be the instrument to make sure our voice is heard in policy debates and strive for equal opportunities for all young people, not leaving anyone behind. Today, we presented the youth goals, and we're looking forward to see those goals reflected in the next youth strategy. Those are the voices, as mentioned already, of 50,000 young people who have worked tirelessly to get their opinion through. So they really must be heard. And here I had a message prepared for Commissioner Navracsics. I'm pretty sure you will all make sure he receives the message through social media. He really needs to step up his game, and he really needs to be our ally right now in the European Commission negotiations to make sure this European Youth Strategy is a complete success. The drafting of European Commission proposals is a real jungle, and we need to be there supporting the Commissioner as much as we can to make sure that passes. But even those with 50,000 young people participating in the structured dialogue, we can even go further. I'm happy to hear that the researchers from the European Youth Researchers Pool reported that diverse groups of young people were consulted. The next structured dialogue process needs to build on this and reach out more, better, higher, and more inclusively to diverse groups of young people and have the means and resources to do so. And our national youth councils and international youth organizations are key to this process, and they're central to this conversation. Our vision is to go to young people instead of waiting for them to find us. Some of them will already find us, but how about those who have lost trust in politics? Almost that 25% of young Europeans who are at risk of poverty and social exclusion, fighting for a dignified life. Their voices deserve to be heard as much as anyone else's. And the fact is that we may require to go the extra mile to make sure that happens. I really want to thank Dani. Thank you from here, and Panayotis, because inclusion and making this process more inclusive is a real priority, and we should really, all of us, make a big effort to make sure that happens. Next point, feedback in this process is something that we haven't cracked quite yet. The feedback is essential. We cannot expect more young people to take part in this process of the structured dialogue if they do not receive feedback of where their input is going. They need to hear from their local municipality about the idea to have youth centers in town 500 kilometers away from the capital, which will provide a safe space for them to stop engaging in unhealthy activities. They need to hear from their education ministries of what happened with those proposals to include citizenship education and formal education curricula. And they need to hear from the European Commission what will happen to their input to the next EU strategy. Accountability is a crucial part of quality youth policy. Not only accountability for public administration, also for us, young leaders elected, for those who voted for us. So the next structured dialogue will need to have a clear and simple follow-up mechanism that would show young people that what has been implemented, and while being pragmatic, why something wasn't followed up. Be it lack of resources, be it lack of expertise, and even be it lack of political will. That is also a message that young people need to hear. If not, we'll be losing all of these young people who are engaging in the structured dialogue because they don't hear where their input is going. So we have set a really ambitious set of priorities and goals, but we need to have sufficient resources to make them a reality. So the upcoming EU strategy, if well-resourced, if it works cross-sectorally and builds on the existing participatory spaces and tools for young people, will be an absolute success. And I want to use the opportunity that I have Jayatma here. Let me once again congratulate you, this time in European soil, for your appointment as the UN Secretary General Envoy on Youth, and confirm the commitment from the European Youth Forum, our national youth councils, and our INGYOs, and young people in Europe to contribute to the conversations at global level. And Youth Up, UN in need of, quoting our friend Kate Gilmore, the most powerful renewable energy in the world, youth. So we also want a UN youth strategy which recognizes us as regional youth platforms, such as the European Youth Forum and its vast representative membership, as key pillars of the work of the UN, and a youth strategy that creates spaces and channels for young people and democratic youth organizations to participate. So we're really counting on you to help us on a UN level. Now, I'm slowly coming to an end. I really want to hear for you to put your hand up. Who of you have heard of the Erasmus Plus program? Right, good. If you didn't put your hand up, I would be scared. You all know the Erasmus Plus program is a great program. We all know it, we all have benefited from it one way or another, and it has transformed our lives in ways we could have never imagined. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that opportunity. It truly disrupted my life, making me fall in love with Europe in a way that no other program could. It was through EU-funded youth work. And the fact is that the structured dialogue is also paid and powered by the Erasmus Plus program. That quality youth work that we have in the EU changes the lives of young people in a very powerful way that nothing else does. And we really need to cherish it and keep investing in it. We need to continue doing what we do well in Europe. And quality youth work is one of the best flagships this continent has. So we really hope that a lot of resources go to this. You have all seen the benefits of the Erasmus program and its impact on young people, delivering a value for every euro spent. But while you probably know this, a lot of excellent projects are submitted. There's not enough money to finance them all. So research tells us that projects many times stay on paper. It is for this reason that we at the Youth Forum with partners are calling for 10 times more Erasmus budget. For every young person that is participating in projects, Erasmus Plus exchanges, and gets to study abroad, we want 10 young people to have this experience. Just imagine what a game changer it would be. What a transformational change of such a size that it could actually move the course of our union. So a petition to you, help us fight for 10 times more the Erasmus Plus budget and ensure that there's enough space for young people. And for the European Commission people here, we say 10. Not 3 times, not 5 times, 10 times. Only 10 times will be the transformative change that this continent needs. And I'm finishing, I promise. We already have heads of state joining this call. President Macron, President Rajoy, Prime Minister Costa, all prime ministers are joining the cause of increasing the budget by 10. We've created this momentum that we really cannot miss this opportunity. So please join us in fighting at each one of your levels of government to increase this budget by 10. And let's make history because we really have the opportunity to do so. To end, just wanted to remind you that so the youthquake was mentioned at the beginning of this conference, and it was named the word of 2017. So I want to ask you all to see if we can make it also the word of 2018, and let's try to shake things up. In June, we will be hosting in the European Parliament in Strasbourg 8,000 young people for the European Youth event and the YoFest. We hope all of you will be there. I think Jayatma will be there. Last week, I was at the European Parliament with former French President Giscard d'Estaing, and he asked me a question like, Louis, do you think the young generation is hungry for change in Europe? And I just really hope that he could be here and listen to all the stories and powerful messages that you have and tremble and and get scared, because I think our envoy says it very well. This generation will be, it's not any young generation, this young generation will be the young generation fixing the issues of this era, fixing climate change, fixing gender equality, fixing equity, fixing accessing the rights of the disadvantaged groups, and achieving sustainable development. Only this generation has the capacity, the drive, and the skills to do so. We are a disruptive generation by nature. So I invite you all to shake things up, be disruptive with us, and come youth up Europe and the world with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis, especially for those inspiring words and key messages that we can all take on board with us. Because we might be coming to an end of this conference, but the process is not finished yet. So now I pass the floor to Naiden Rashko, Vice President of Bulgarian National Youth Forum, who is going to pass the process, who is going to hand over the process to Austrian presidency team. Naiden Rashko.
Good day, everyone. Allow me to change a bit my speech as well. And first of all, say a big thank you to Luis for saying these words on behalf of all of us, because I believe that this is what we came for, to speak up. And changing a bit the agenda, before everything else, I would like to give this sign on behalf of the National Youth Forum Bulgaria to Luis to take to the European Youth Forum. Thank you. And now, dear guests, respective representatives of institutions, fellow delegates, thank you for being part of the European Youth Conference here in Sofia. It is a privilege to have you at this conference from the 6th cycle of the Structured Dialogue. Admirations to all delegates for your dedication, energy, passion, and contribution to the agenda. I hope that you had a great experience in the last 4 days. Structured Dialogue is an amazing process where young people and policymakers are working together and speaking up for a shared dream of Europe. In some of the conversations today, I noticed that despite of the challenges which are unfolding in front of us, young people are determined to have a leading role in the future of Europe. What's next is not just a question that we ask waiting for someone else to answer. It's a question from the young people to the young people. And the only way to answer this question is to speak up what we stand for. Dear policymakers, I believe that empowering youth and including young people as an equal partner, we will ensure the continuity of the fundamental values of the European Union. Structured dialogue should be an example for every country for a democratic process where institutions, alongside with young people, are equally included in the preparation and execution as well as in the policy making. As young people, it's very important for us to be honest and face challenges as they are, because this is the only way that we can overcome them. I believe that this conference is an opportunity for all of us to learn and take a note regarding inclusion, equality, and collaboration. It's an opportunity for us to be humble and join hands for the better future. We are already in the 6th cycle of this process, where Bulgaria has the privilege to share this responsibility with Estonia and Austria. I would like to invite here next to me Mr. Mik Taros, Vice President of the National Youth Council of Estonia, and Mr. Christian Zoll, President of the Youth Council of Austria. At the first youth conference in Tallinn, thematic challenges were selected to be further discussed as part of the 6th cycle of structured dialogue. On behalf of the National Youth Forum Bulgaria, it's my pleasure to give this present to the Estonian delegation in recognition of their role. Thank you. In the last 4 days, as part of the second EU Youth Conference here in Sofia, together we turned these challenges into our European Youth Goals. In recognition for your efforts and contribution to this process, you will receive a pin as a present and reminder to always pick up what you stand for. Thank you. Now it's time to start preparing for the third EU conference in Austria, where we are going to map the implementation plan of our European Youth Goals. On behalf of the National Youth Forum Bulgaria, it's my pleasure to give this present to the Austrian delegation in recognition of their role in the process. Thank you. Thank you. With this, I'm giving the floor to Mr. Christian Sol, President of the National Youth Council of Austria. Thank you.
There should be a video. No?
We are not stopped. The winners. The sensation that changes everything. We are the biggest show, the fairest dream, a courage to set an example. We are Youth Conference.
Dear participants and partners from across the European Union, dear delegates, thank you, Naiden, for the call to speak up. I would like to express my utmost respect and appreciation to the Bulgarian Presidency for the warm welcome and hospitality. Together we have shaped the future of young people in Europe. Together we have created inspiring youth goals. But why is this all important? The EU is a success story for peace and security in Europe. But we don't want to stop here, but to further develop the Union so that it becomes a true common project for all citizens. In order to ensure a union of peace, diversity, solidarity, and participation, we work all together. We, as young people, are central actors, of course. Many of us have grown up in the European Union, and without any doubt, we are the generation that will live the longest with the decisions taken today. This is why children and young people need to be at the core of the future development of the Union. Our voice does not only need to be heard, but needs to be taken in account. And this is why inspiring youth goals are important to give us a common understanding for what is next for youth in Europe. And in this process, after the Bulgarian conference, guess what will be next? Austria, of course. We invite you all to Austria, to Vienna, where the next European Union Youth Conference will take place. We are passionate hosts, and we will create a fruitful working atmosphere for you. We are conscious about the environment as well, and we're proud to host you at a green event. We're looking forward to celebrating what we have reached with the EU Youth Strategy over the past 9 years. And, of course, we want to build the foundation for the next 9 years. We invite everyone in the youth sector, ministries, young people, and youth organizations to make use of the youth goals and contribute to them. At the conference, we will focus on advocacy. How can we promote and disseminate youth goals? We will plan how to make best use of the youth goals in the member states. You will also have the unique opportunity to speak directly at the conference with some of the youth ministers. And also, we want to explore how we can invite people from other sectors to support us in our youth goals. Apart from the conference during the Austrian presidency, we have a lot of work ahead. We want to ensure that the negotiations are brought to a positive conclusion and the Council agrees on the next youth strategy. We want to ensure that the youth goals are reflected in the next strategy, that there are enough resources to actually implement it in the strategy, and that the participation of young people themselves is a key element in governance. Let's shape Europe's future together in a visionary way. Let's engage in a meaningful dialogue, and let's be unstoppable. Let's score some youth goals together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. So, dear shakers and shapers of youth policy, we have come to an end of this conference. From Tallinn, where we identified what matters to young people, what are the topics, we reached the agreement what are the youth goals we want to see in the future to be achieved, of course. Not only written on the paper, but actually to be implemented. Together, young people with decision makers. So I want to thank the presidency team for youth for inviting us and organizing this conference. All the supporting members, supporting team, finalizing team, researchers, of course, all facilitators who guide us through this process, and nevertheless, the volunteers. Please give a round of applause. And of course, thank you. Thank you for bringing your content, thank you for speaking up, and thank you for contributing to youth goals. Now, enjoy the rest of the time. We know what's next. It's Austria.